Buongiorno a tutti. 80 years ago today, on April 28, 1945, Benito Mussolini, the deposed Italian fascist dictator, was summarily executed by an Italian partisan in the village of Giulino di Mezzigra in northern Italy during the final days of World War II in Europe. The generally accepted version of events is that Mussolini was shot by Walter Audisio, a communist partisan. The circumstances surrounding Mussolini's death and the identity of his executioner, however, have been the focus of ongoing debate and controversy in Italy ever since the war ended. In 1940, Mussolini took his country into World War II on the side of Nazi Germany, but as soon met with military failure. He was reduced to the position of head of a German puppet state in northern Italy by the fall of 1943, and he had to deal with the Allied invasion from the south, as well as growingly bloody internal conflict with the partisans. Mussolini's position became untenable in April 1945 as the Allies breached the final German defenses in northern Italy and a partisan uprising spread throughout the cities. On April 25th, he fled Milan, where he had been based, and headed towards the Swiss border. 2 days later, on April 27th, local partisans captured him and his mistress, Clara Petacci, close to the village of Dongo on Lake Como. Mussolini and Petacci were executed the following afternoon, 2 days before Adolf Hitler's suicide. Mussolini and Petacci's bodies were transported to Milan and dumped in the Piazzale Loreto, a suburban square where a sizable irate mob would taunt and assault them. Then, above a service station on the square, they were suspended upside down from a metal girder. Mussolini was first laid to rest in an unmarked grave, but in 1946, fascist supporters dug up and took his body. After recovering it 4 months later, the authorities concealed it for 11 years. His remains were eventually permitted to be buried in the Mussolini family crypt in Predoppio, his hometown, in 1957. Neo-fascist rallies are held to commemorate his death anniversary, and his tomb was turned into a place of pilgrimage for them. Now, let me tell you about the word fascism. Fascism is a far-right, authoritarian, and ultranationalist political ideology and movement that is typified by a strong regimentation of society and the economy, a dictatorial leader, centralized autocracy, militarism, the forcible suppression of opposition, the belief in a natural social hierarchy, and the subordination of individual interests for the alleged benefit of the nation or race. It's also at the extreme right of the conventional right-wing spectrum, opposed to Marxism, democracy, anarchism, pluralism, free markets, communism, liberalism, and socialism. It rose to prominence in the early 20th century Europe. During World War I, Italy saw the emergence of the first fascist movements, which later extended to Germany and other European nations. There were supporters of fascism outside of Europe as well. Fascists view World War I as a revolution that fundamentally altered society, the state technology, and the nature of war. The division between civilians and combatants was eliminated with the onset of total war and the widespread mobilization of society. There was a rise in military citizenship, where all citizens in some kind of military involvement. As a result of the war, a strong state emerged that was able to organize millions of people to fight on the front lines, supply the necessary supplies, and exercise previously unheard of power to meddle in the affairs of its citizens. Political violence, imperialist violence, and war are all seen by fascists as ways to revitalize the country. To achieve autarky or national economic self-sufficiency, fascists frequently support the creation of a totalitarian one-party state and a dirigiste economy, which is a market economy in which the state exercises a strong directive role through economic interventionist policies. The extreme nationalism and authoritarianism of fascism can make the form of a belief and manifest destiny or a return to historical grandeur, such as Mussolini's attempt to restore the Roman Empire. The opposition between the in-group and the out-group may also be at its core. Racism and discrimination against the demonized other, including Jews and other groups, were combined with racial purity and a master race in the case of Nazism. Targeted groups include immigrants, transgender individuals, homosexuals, and members of ethnic minorities. Fascist regimes have been inspired by such hatred to carry out genocides, forced sterilizations, deportations, and massacres. Millions of people were murdered during World War II as a result of the fascist Axis powers' genocidal and imperialist goals. Few political parties have publicly identified as fascist since the end of World War II in 1945, and political rivals frequently use the term disparagingly. I can't pronounce that word. Sometimes modern parties with beliefs reminiscent of or derived from fascist movements of the 20th century are referred to as neo-fascists or post-fascists. To denote their position, some opposition groups have taken up the term anti-fascist, which is frequently abbreviated as Antifa. Now let's talk about fascist Italy. The Kingdom of Italy, which was ruled by Benito Mussolini and the National Fascist Party from 1922 to 1943 and turned into a totalitarian dictatorship, is referred to by this term, historiography. The Italian fascists pushed economic modernization, traditional social values, and a closer relationship with the Roman Catholic Church while enforcing totalitarian rule and stifling political opposition. The fascist regime went through several comparatively separate stages. The parliamentary system was maintained during the first phase, although there was legally organized executive dictatorship in place. Mussolini's foreign policy included bombing Corfu, establishing a protectorate over Albania, pacifying Libya against rebels in the Italian colonies of Tripolitania and Cyrenaica, and annexing the city of Fiume into Italy following a treaty with the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. The construction of the fascist dictatorship proper was the second phase. There was less foreign policy intervention during the third phase. The Second Italo-Ethiopian War, which was started by Eritrea and Somaliland, conflicts with the League of Nations, and resulted in sanctions, increasing economic autarky. The invasion of Albania and the signing of the Pact of Steel were among the aggressive foreign policies that defined the fourth phase. The actual World War II, which ended in military defeat, constituted the fifth phase. The sixth and final phase was the Rump-Salo government, which was ruled by Germany. During World War II, Italy fought on multiple fronts with some degree of success as a leading member of the Axis powers. But Mussolini was deposed and taken into custody by King Victor Emmanuel II, following the Soviet Union's victories on the Eastern Front, the German-Italian defeat in Africa, and the Allied landings in Sicily that followed. In September 1943, the new administration agreed to an armistice with the Allies. The Italian Social Republic, a collaborativist puppet state ruled by Mussolini and fascist loyalists, was established after Germany captured the northern half of Italy and saved Mussolini. The vast Italian resistance movement persisted in its guerrilla warfare against the German and RSI forces as the nation plunged into civil war. Later, on April 28, 1945, the resistance captured and executed Mussolini, and the following day, the fighting came to an end. The 1946 institutional referendum on whether Italy would remain a monarchy or become a republic was prompted by civil unrest shortly after the war. The Italian Republic, the modern Italian state, was established by the Italian people after they chose to forsake the monarchy. And last but not least, Let's talk about Mussolini himself. Il Duce. Mussolini began his career as a journalist for the Avanti newspaper and a socialist politician. He joined the Italian Socialist Party's National Detectorate in 1912, but was expelled for supporting military action during World War I. Before being injured and released from the Royal Italian Army in 1917, Mussolini founded the newspaper Il Popolo d'Italia in 1914. No, I don't think that was the right year. No. In the end, he criticized the PSI. His opinions now focused on Italian nationalism and established the fascist movement, which promoted revolutionary nationalism and cut across class boundaries in opposition to egalitarianism and class conflict. King Victor Emmanuel III named him Prime Minister in October 1922, after the March on Rome. Mussolini and his supporters used a secret police to crush opposition and banned labor strikes before enacting legislation that made the country a one-party dictatorship. He sought to establish a totalitarian state and within 5 years used both legal and illicit methods to establish dictatorial authority. He ratified the Lateran Treaty, which created the Vatican City in 1929. The fascist concept of spazio vitale, or living space, served as the foundation for Mussolini's foreign policy, which sought to increase Italian territory and establish an Italian sphere of influence in Southeast Europe. Following a treaty with Yugoslavia, his government annexed Fiume, and in the 1920s he ordered the bombing of Corfu and the pacification of Libya due to an incident with Greece. After the Second Italo-Ethiopian War, Ethiopia was subjugated in 1936 and joined Eritrea and Somalia to form Italian East Africa. Albania was annexed by Italian forces in 1939. During the Spanish Civil War, Mussolini ordered an intervention in Spain between 1936 and 1939 with support of Francisco Franco. Mussolini participated in the Stresa Front, the Four-Power Pact, and the Treaty of Lausanne. But then tensions increased in the League of Nations, which he left in 1937. He became estranged from the democratic powers. Italy joined forces with Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan to form the Axis alliance, which was now antagonistic to France and Britain. Italy was unprepared for the Second World War due to the massive resource losses from the 1930s wars. Mussolini first proclaimed Italy to be non-belligerent. However, he joined the war on Germany's side in June 1940 to share the spoils because he thought the Allies were going to lose. In July 1943, Mussolini was arrested and removed from power by King Victor Emmanuel III, following the Allied invasion of Sicily and the change in the tide. Mussolini was saved by Germany in the Gran Sasso raid in September 1943, after the king consented to the armistice with the Allies. Nazi German dictator Adolf Hitler installed Mussolini as the leader of the Italian Social Republic, a German collaborationist government, and that was a puppet state in German-occupied northern Italy. Mussolini and their mistress Clara Petacci tried to escape to Switzerland as the Allied victory approached, but they were apprehended by communist partisans and executed on April 28, 1945. Well, that's all I have for you today. If you like what you hear, be sure to leave a comment and subscribe. Also, my final words will be spoken in Italian to those who are from Italy. Ciao, buona giornata, viva l'Italia.